One of the most tragic and infamous crimes in Adelaide's history took place here on April 11, 1953, when John Balaban, a young man from Romania, committed a triple murder and assaulted a young woman. The victims included his 30-year-old wife, Thelma Joyce Balaban, her 6-year-old son, Philip Cadd, Thelma's 66-year-old mother, Mrs. Susan Ackland, and Verna Main, a 24-year-old waitress from the Sunshine Cafe. Born in Nabib, Romania in 1922, Balaban's family life was intensely troubled. His mother left his father because of his cruelty towards her, and shortly afterwards, Balaban's father hanged himself. In 1944, Balaban started reading philosophy books and decided that there was no God. Even though he didn't believe in God, he said that once God appeared to him and told him to follow his conscience, to be happy. In May 1946, after a fight with some communists, he was held in a mental hospital in Cluj for 3 weeks. During this time, he earned a degree in physics and metallurgy. He also joined the Romanian army for 9 months, but escaped to France in October 1947, while the Soviets were taking control of Romania. On the night of February 22, 1948, or early the next morning, Balaban killed a 32-year-old Polish woman named Zora Kusich in her studio apartment in the Auteuil district of Paris. Kusich was a chemist, and her body was found 5 days later. Balaban later confessed that he was in a rage because she didn't want to have sex. So he strangled her. He said, "I didn't mean to kill her, but I felt I had to." Right after the murder, he moved to a different place and then left France. The murder of Zora Kusich went unsolved until Balaban was arrested in Australia for other murders. In April 1953, the Adelaide police told Alexander Duncan, the Chief Commissioner of the Victorian Police, that Balaban had confessed to killing a woman named Zora Kusich in Paris in 1948. Interpol shared this information with French authorities, who confirmed the details of the crime. In August 1953, Balaban wrote a confession about the murder while in his cell at Adelaide Jail, answering questions from the French authorities and recalling specific street names and house numbers related to the crime. Balaban arrived in Australia in January 1951 on a ship called the Hellenic Prince, part of a large wave of immigrants coming after World War II. His immigration record listed him as a chemist. The ship carried 954 passengers from 18 different countries across Europe, many of whom were displaced persons looking for a fresh start. Some passengers had come from Paris and were not used to living in camps. They had hoped for a comfortable journey, but their expectations changed when they faced the realities of sharing close quarters on the ship. During the trip, Balaban got into an argument with a migration official and ended up locked in the ship's cells. Originally, the plan was for the passengers to disembark in Fremantle, but they received orders during the voyage to go to Melbourne instead. By early November 1951, Balaban was settled in Adelaide, South Australia. That month, he wrote a letter to the Adelaide Advertiser newspaper suggesting that the Department of Immigration use phonograph records to help teach English to new immigrants. His address was listed as Whitmore Square in Adelaide. While in Australia, Balaban worked various jobs, including grape picking, oxy welding, and general labor. Despite claims in the newspapers that he was an industrial or metallurgical chemist, he struggled to find work in his field. In Adelaide, he met a divorced woman named Thelma Cadd, who owned a cafe called the Sunshine Snack Shop on Gouger Street. Thelma lived above the cafe with her 6-year-old son, Philip. Her 65-year-old mother, Susan Ackland, often visited, although she usually lived in Kilburn. Balaban and Thelma married on September 27, 1952, at Clayton Congregational Church in Norwood. Unfortunately, their marriage was troubled and short-lived. By December 1952, they had separated, and Balaban was living alone in a room on Gower Street in North Adelaide. He later blamed his mother-in-law for much of the trouble in his marriage, telling police after he murdered both Thelma and Susan that Susan always interfered and caused problems in their lives. Balaban claimed she had caused issues for Thelma with her first husband too, suggesting a long history of family conflict. In the early evening of December 5, 1952, the mutilated body of Zora Kusich, a 29-year-old Yugoslav immigrant, was found in her tin shack behind a boarding house on North Parade in Torrensville, a suburb of West Adelaide. A friend of hers, a Bulgarian immigrant, discovered her body. Zora was lying on her bed with deep cuts on her neck and side, and her body showed signs of being stabbed multiple times. A blood-stained penknife was found in a dish of water near her bed. The day after Zora's death, police visited Balaban's room on Gower Street to question him. They found newspaper articles about the murder on his bed. When shown a photo of Zora, Balaban initially claimed he didn't know her. He was taken to the detective office, where he continued to deny any connection. After a couple of days, detectives made more inquiries and arrested him. Under pressure from witness statements, Balaban admitted he met Zora at a city hotel while drinking with another Romanian man. He claimed they took a taxi to another hotel in Torrensville, but he denied going to her room. A few days later, Balaban was officially charged with the murder and held in custody for 2 weeks while police gathered more evidence. This period was later extended. In early January 1953, a hearing took place over 5 days in front of Police Magistrate L.E. Clark. After reviewing the evidence, the magistrate concluded that while there was strong suspicion against Balaban, it wasn't enough to prove he was guilty of murder. He believed no jury would convict him based on the available evidence. As a result, Balaban was released from court, and he cried as he left. The day after his release, Balaban spoke with reporters. An article in the Adelaide News described him as a handsome 29-year-old who looked pale and worn after his court experience, mistakenly stating he had been acquitted. He told reporters, in his broken English, that he felt born again and wanted to take long walks around the city and observe people. He mentioned that once he had enough money for a typewriter, he planned to write a novel about his life's ups and downs. A month later, after being arrested for the murders of his wife and mother-in-law, Balaban confessed to killing Zora Kusich. He admitted they had met on December 5, 1952, at the Royal Admiral Hotel, then took a taxi to her room behind the boarding house. They drank beer together, and Zora allegedly asked him for £5 in exchange for sex. Balaban claimed he was strongly against prostitution and that the way she asked upset him, leading to her murder. He used the penknife he found in her room to kill and mutilate her, then washed his hands in the dish of water where he had left the knife before going to the Southern Cross Hotel on King William Street. Balaban stated that he went back to his wife on February 23, 1953, but soon she began to complain again. By April 11th, he left the house once more and went out drinking. According to his account, Balaban then went on a violent, drunken spree along the banks of the River Torrens. He got into a fight with a young woman in a riverside restroom and found an iron bar near the university footbridge. He used it to strike a man who was sleeping on the ground behind Adelaide Oval. While near Victoria Bridge, Balaban encountered an Aboriginal man and a white woman. They shared drinks, but then he attacked the man with the iron bar. Later, as he was near the Torrens tennis courts, another man chased him, but Balaban struck him as well. In court, Balaban explained, "I don't know why I hit him, but I disapproved of him, as I do of people lying on the banks of the Torrens and making love." Exhausted, dirty, and bloodied from his attacks, Balaban returned to the cafe above which he lived early on the morning of April 12, 1953. He looked in the bathroom mirror to check his injuries. At that moment, he claimed he decided to kill his wife, believing she was the reason for his condition and the violent events of the night. He grabbed a claw hammer and went to their bedroom, where he brutally struck his wife, Thelma, on the head. Afterward, he moved to the other bedroom, where Susan Ackland and Thelma's young son, Philip Cadd, were sleeping. He assaulted Susan with the hammer, and when Philip sat up and cried out, Balaban struck him too, later justifying it by saying, "I thought it better that he die too." He then went to the front room sleepout, where 24-year-old Verna Mani, an employee at the cafe, was asleep. Hearing the commotion, she woke up to find Balaban attacking her without warning. She raised her arms to protect her head, but he paused and asked, "Do you want to see my wife?" Hearing a noise from another room, he added, "Someone is still alive inside," and left the room. Seizing the opportunity, Verna quickly latched the door and, desperate to escape, jumped out the window, falling 17 feet onto the pavement below. Nearby, several young men in Brown Street, roughly 100 yards from the Sunshine Cafe, heard a woman screaming for help. Moments later, they witnessed Verna falling from the balcony and crashing onto the footpath, bloodied and in severe pain. They called the police and an ambulance, which arrived shortly thereafter. Balaban was briefly spotted on the roof of the building next door, having escaped through a bathroom window and across several rooftops before climbing down into Thomas Street, a cul-de-sac. Constable McLaren, who had just arrived, saw Balaban running toward him from Thomas Street wearing a grey coat over a singlet. McLaren shone his flashlight and drew his revolver, successfully apprehending Balaban. His face was smeared with blood, and he had abrasions and one discolored eye. In the rooms above the cafe, police found Thelma Balaban dead on her bed. In the other bedroom, Susan Ackland was alive, but later died in the hospital from a severe skull fracture. Philip Cadd was found unconscious on another bed, also suffering from a fractured skull. He was rushed to Adelaide Children's Hospital in critical condition, but tragically, he died 11 days later without regaining consciousness. Verna Mani was treated for 2 depressed skull fractures and a fractured spine after her harrowing escape. After he was arrested for killing his wife, Balaban told the police that he had also murdered Zora Kusich in December 1952. During the early questioning, he mentioned another murder he committed in Paris in 1948, which led the police to contact French authorities for more information. Balaban was officially charged with Zora Kusich's murder on December 5, 1952, and later for the murder of his wife on April 12, 1953. He was kept in jail while waiting for his trial. The trial for Zora Kusich's murder started on July 22, 1953, at the Adelaide Criminal Court. Balaban said he was not guilty. The Crown Prosecutor, Reginald Chamberlain, told the jury that Balaban had confessed in detail, and the only possible defense he could have was claiming he was insane. During the trial, a psychiatrist named Dr. H. Southwood testified that Balaban had a mental illness called paranoid schizophrenia. He suggested that Balaban could be labeled as mentally defective under the Mental Defectives Act. However, another psychiatrist, Dr. H. Birch, disagreed. He was the head of South Australian government mental hospitals and described Balaban as a psychopathic personality, meaning he wasn't insane or mentally ill, but had a personality issue that made it hard for him to follow society's rules. Dr. Birch pointed out that there were strong sexual motives behind Balaban's actions, including the murders. On the last day of the trial, July 29th, the jury found Balaban guilty after a short discussion. When asked if he wanted to say anything before his sentence, Balaban replied, "I want to obey the law, and I think I am not guilty." The judge then sentenced him to death by hanging. Balaban was scheduled to be executed on August 26, 1953. On August 7th, his lawyers asked the Supreme Court of South Australia to let him appeal his conviction. The appeal was heard over 6 days by a group of judges from the Court of Criminal Appeal. On August 17, 1953, the judges announced their decision, rejecting Balaban's appeal. In the week leading up to his execution, Balaban became violent and attacked a prison guard, trying to choke him. Fortunately, other guards quickly stopped him. On the morning of August 26, 1953, Balaban was hanged at the Adelaide jail. Before the execution, police blocked the roads leading to the prison and stationed guards around the area to prevent protests against the death penalty. However, surprisingly, no one from the public showed up to demonstrate. Later that day, the city coroner investigated Balaban's death, which was attended by members of the press. The coroner confirmed that Balaban died from a judicial hanging. This was the first execution carried out in the newly renovated hanging tower at the Adelaide jail. Afterward, Balaban was buried in a special area known as Murderer's Row within the prison grounds. The grave had been prepared earlier in the week, ready for his body. A newspaper from that time reported that Balaban hadn't shaved for days. His hair was messy and dirty, and stubble covered his bruised face, giving him the look of a typical violent criminal. However, he seemed strangely calm as he allowed the executioner to adjust the noose around his neck. Moments later, a loud click from the gallows signaled to all the prisoners in the jail that Balaban had been executed. Balaban was the first migrant, called a New Australian, a term for people who moved to Australia after World War II to be hanged in South Australia. Many people believe that his ghost still haunts the Adelaide jail. Visitors on ghost tours have claimed to feel his eerie presence and even seen signs of him. The day after his execution, an anonymous message appeared in the local newspaper. It read, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." This was the only sign of sympathy Balaban ever received, and he died without any friends. Even though the police blocked off the road to the jail to stop people from protesting against the death penalty, no one showed up to oppose his execution. The only memorial for Balaban is his name and the date of his execution, scratched into a brick wall inside the prison. This mark is still there today, serving as a reminder of his life and death.